May all that I say and all that you hear, all that we think and all that we resolve be in the name of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Sunday, the 28th of June, 1992, was an incredibly hot day, much hotter than today even. The sun was beating down from quite early in the morning, and by 1 o'clock that day, I had made a new and important discovery. And it was this: the dog collars made out of plastic give you a sweaty neck. And I made this discovery because I had just been ordained deacon 28 years ago today. Lichfield Cathedral, usually cool as the shadiest of rills, was baking hot and crammed with people, and even with the great west doors flung open wide, it was a hothouse. And I can vividly remember even now the sound of 1,000 people desperately fanning themselves with their orders of service. And I can remember too the keen sense of anticipation as the young priest from South London, who had been leading our ordination retreat, entered the pulpit. The retreat had been brilliant, and we braced ourselves for a stunning sermon, which it was. It was also of sadistic length, and had to be brought to an end after 30 minutes by the cathedral's head verger standing underneath the pulpit, waving his wand violently from side to side to attract the preacher's attention. Eventually, spotting Godfrey's impression of a human windscreen wiper, the preacher turned to the wilting and desperate bishop, shrugged, and ended his sermon with the memorable line, "Bishop Keith, I think it's time for the creed." That young preacher from South London was the then vicar of Tulse Hill. His name was John Sentamu. And in the longest sermon that I have ever heard at an ordination, he charged us to live by the joy, simplicity, and compassion of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that phrase stuck with Sentamu throughout his ministry, so much so that as he laid his crozier on the high altar of York Minster for the last time 2 weeks ago, those words were used again. The joy, simplicity, and compassion of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Joy, simplicity, compassion. I'm glad that I remember those words, as well as my sticky neck, which is why to this day the collar you see me wearing is not made of plastic, but linen. I do remember the heat still. I remember the light in the cathedral. I remember the bishop's kindly smile as he laid his hands on my head. I remember screwing up my eyes and trying to open my heart and longing to feel something at that moment. I don't know what, some kind of zap, some inner glow, something, well, supernatural, a confirmation that this was not just human business, but divine. Isaiah, in the temple in Jerusalem, in the year 742 BC, the year that King Uzziah died, had a supernatural experience of the divine. Look what happened to him. I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lofty, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. God himself on his throne, wearing a robe so astonishingly grand that the whole temple is filled just by the hem of it. That's not all. Seraphs were in attendance above him. Each had 6 wings. With 2 they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they flew. These seraphim are covering their faces because the glory of God is too much for them. Even they cannot face him, but they know what they must sing. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. When Isaiah sees this vision of the Lord with his robe filling the temple and the smoke filling the temple, he not only sees the reality of God, he sees himself as he really is, with his own heart filled not by the incense smoke of worship, but by the acrid smelling smoke of human sinfulness. Woe is me, I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. Yet my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. To see God is to die, as you'll discover if you read Exodus chapter 33. Even those seraphs hid their faces from the vision of the Lord. But for Isaiah, this vision does not mean death, but life, the end of an old way and the beginning of a new calling. For a seraph flies to him from the altar with a burning coal, which cleanses his lips and forgives his sins. That would have hurt in more ways than one. But then, and only then, is Isaiah able to respond to God's call. Whom shall I send? Here am I, says Isaiah. Send me. On June the 28th, 1992, when I heard that read, the first reading at the ordination service, I thought it was nice. Now, 28 years later, I think it's terrifying. We are no different to Isaiah. In one way or another, you and I are people of unclean lips. For where are our voices to be heard in this foolish and lost generation? Are they heard crying out for the homeless? Are they heard crying out for the victims of racism? Are they heard sharing the pain of those who are murdered in Reading last weekend? Abroad? Or have we got, and isn't this just a horrific phrase, compassion fatigue? Worse still for me and for you, have we got joy, simplicity and compassion fatigue? Worn out by months of isolation and uncertainty, sickness and bereavement, forgetful of our identity, our context and our calling? Are we hoping, as I hoped 28 years ago, for a sign, that supernatural zap that might somehow resolve our insecurities and robe our destinies? A new direction, a new normal. I think my ordination prayer was answered, but not at the time. I have no doubt whatsoever that that seraphic burning coal has touched my lips time and time again over the past 3 decades. It's had to. I've been aware of his glory too often to be unaware of my own sinfulness. Slow to realize his amazing grace, what choice was left to him but to batter my heart that I might rise and stand? The context of calling is awareness, both of him and of us. Meekness in the face of his majesty, not falsely manufactured, but cauterized by burning love. And the calling is not only for those whose collared necks get sweaty on the hottest days. It's for each one who looks to lift their eyes to God's glory and their mouths to show forth God's praise. The ones who are honest enough to say, woe is me, and trusting enough to say, here am I, send me. Even the seraphs could not look upon God. But Isaiah did, and he did not die. He lived. He was given a new life in God's service. That can be yours too. Pray for it. And today, please, pray for me. May we all know the joy, simplicity, and compassion of the gospel of Jesus Christ.